Hey, what's up, guys? In this video, I'm going to answer a question that I've received a couple times, and that is, have I ever had any encounters with Mexican mafia or Mexican cartel members? And the answer to that is yes. Not many times in life, but I have encountered them. The first time was actually in Mexico, in Tijuana, Mexico. All right, so I had reason to be down there and some business that I needed to conduct. I'm not going to go into details about that. For those of you that are unfamiliar, Tijuana is basically like the Wild West when it comes to these kind of things. Anything you could think of, any aspect of illegal life you could think of, you have an abundance of it down there. Not only drugs, but also human trafficking, sex trade, anything you could think of. So I had scheduled a meeting with the people that I needed to speak to, and they gave me the address, and they told me it was a bar that we own. Meet us at this bar. So I said, all right. So I went into Mexico, found the bar. I didn't realize that the bar was actually a whorehouse that they owned. Real big spot also. And upstairs was a hotel they also owned that was attached by a staircase. And the customers at the whorehouse would take the girls right up the stairs into the hotel rooms. So they were making money in both ways. These guys showed up. When they finally did, they offered me whatever women I wanted, and I politely declined. I told them I'm not here for that. I'm here to talk business. So if you don't mind, let's just talk what we need to talk about. And they said, well, before we talk about anything, you need to do this. And they spread some cocaine on the table and told me, you need to sniff that up first. And I said, listen, I don't fuck with this shit like that, man. But I understand. I'm not going to argue. I understand exactly the reason why they were asking me to do that. And so I banged it out, I snorted it, and that was that. From that point on, we continued in having the conversation that I wanted to. Things went well. We did business with each other a couple times even after that. And that was my one encounter with them. These guys were stand-up people. I know there's a lot of danger especially in American, dealing in these kinds of things in Mexico. But they treated me with a lot of respect. Always. I never had any problem, though sometimes I did feel in danger in certain parts. I also did some business in Rosarritos, Mexico, and it was crazy. Some of these places I went, the minute I got out of my car, I'd have like dozens of people following me, little kids especially. Wherever I walked, they would follow me everywhere. Just watching me, maybe waiting for the opportunity to rob me, seeing what I'm doing, who knows. But they were all over me. And I did realize that there's a lot of risk in doing this. So, but I was all right. I didn't have any problem, luckily, and it all worked out. We made money together and moved on. I never took them up on their offer for all these women they were trying to throw at me because that's not my thing. But it was a generous offer anyway, so I respect them for that. The next time I encountered a Mexican mafia guy was actually in jail. And he was in the same unit as I, and we started talking to each other. We became friendly with each other. And, this story about me doing some business in Tijuana came up. So when we started talking about that, he started telling me all the things that he used to do in Tijuana. And this guy's thing was human trafficking. And he was the first one that opened my eyes to the reality of the whole border situation between Mexico and the United States. He told me there are hundreds and hundreds of tunnels that are being used every single day from Mexico to California. And so he said any efforts that they're trying to make, sometimes they find a couple of them, they seal them up with cement. It's all bullshit. They're making new ones every single day, and there are already so many of them that nobody knows. So he told me on some days he would make 30 trips back and forth from Mexico to United States, smuggling people and drugs and other things as well. He told me some of these tunnels, the ones that are used mainly for the drugs, have railroad tracks laid down in them, throughout them, for the entirety with carts. So they load the drugs up on them and they just push the shit and continue on in the tunnel and come up on the other side across the border. So this was his thing, you know, and as much as I don't really agree with that, the human trafficking, you know, it's kind of one of those things that, you know, it's questionable for me. After I spoke to him, you know, I understood, and I really don't have a problem with it at the end of the day, because he's not forcing anybody to do this. These people are willingly paying him. At the time, he told me between $5,000 and $8,000 US each to be brought across the border. But they're doing this to better their lives. So aside from the illegality of it, as an American, I understand there are a lot of negative consequences to this, you know, pouring in of illegal people. Putting myself in their shoes, I will probably do the same. I know I would do the same. I will, you know, sacrifice and take risks to bring my family in the place that I thought allowed for the best opportunity and potential for them to have a nice future. I would do the same thing. So I didn't hold anything against him for doing that because, again, guys, he was creating an avenue for these people to get here where otherwise they would probably trek across the desert and end up dead. Many, many children die along those treks. So it's much better for them to utilize these tunnels than try to just make it across and rough it out, having no idea of the days ahead of them and the planning necessary and supplies necessary to survive something like that. A lot of them take infant children and little kids with them, and it's a very dumb move to do that. And I'm not saying they're dumb, but they're just uninformed of what it actually is. So I really have no problem with it, guys. You know, I'm a free market kind of person. I believe that, you know, it's supply and demand, and there's an absolute demand for stuff like that, including the drugs. You know, he and I used to have some long conversations about this whole drug problem in America, and that a lot of it comes from Mexico. Most of it comes through that, you know, Tijuana, San Diego border. But he made a good point to me. You know, he told me, he said, listen, it's the Americans. It's the Americans that are creating the demand for this. It's not the Mexicans. It's not the Central Americans, the South Americans, the Africans, the Europeans. They're not the ones using up this cocaine and this heroin. It's the Americans. So it's kind of fucked up that the Americans are the one pointing the fingers at everybody else, when in actuality, they should look in the mirror first and realize that, hey, this is us. This is a problem that we have. And if we address the problem with ourselves first, the second problem will go away on its own. We don't need to address that. So the whole war on drugs, in my opinion, is bullshit. There's no such thing as a war on an inanimate object. A war is on a person or a people. And in this case, the war on drugs is really a war against the American people, because they're the ones who we're locking up and putting away and destroying the lives of for possessing or selling these drugs. I don't agree with any of that. I don't have any problem with any of that. So, you know, I'm absolutely against these kind of laws that ruin people's lives. I believe in freedom at the end of the day. And freedom to me is defined by my ability to do whatever it is that I want, as long as I'm not harming another person. Some of you may say that the drug dealers are harming other people, but that's weak and that's bullshit. They're not harming anybody. They're not forcing anybody. Unless we're talking about them supplying it to children, which I'm absolutely against. Adults are free. Free will. And that's it. You choose to do something, you do it. Nobody forces you. So I don't agree that there should be any consequence to selling or possessing something when you're not hurting somebody else. It's our own body to do what we like with. So to sum up this video, guys, my experience with these Mexican gangsters, Mexican mafia, Mexican cartel, whatever you want to call them, was a positive one. I never had a problem. One of the guys that I became the closest of friends with during the time I was in one of the county jails was actually the leader of one of these Mexican gangs, and he and I are like brothers. He's like my little brother, you know, and even though it's been years since we've seen each other, to this day, you know, I have his back. Anything he needs, I'm there. At any time this phone rings, I'm there. And likewise, I'm sure. So that's it, guys. That's the video, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll talk to you next time. Thanks.